When thus the mind is permeated through and through with the imperishable idea of God, man attains the supreme goal of life. Please watch on to find out more.
Vegan, treasure of the world.
Hello, pious viewers. Hello means hello in Malayalam, a language spoken in Lakshadweep. I'm J. Raj. The blessed people of Lakshadweep admire your steadfast determination in your spiritual endeavors. May the vegan world manifest soon to alleviate the suffering of all beings in Allah's merciful grace. Sri Swami Ram Das was born in Kanhangad, India. As a young man, he understood that the only way to eternal peace is through the divine path of oneness with the Supreme Being. He thus began to devote his life solely to God. It was at this time that his father, also a great bhakta or worshipper of Lord Ram, taught him to chant the holy and all-powerful Ram mantra, Sri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Assuming the name Ram Das, meaning the servant of Ram, he soon after received darshan, or spiritual grace, from Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. Following a retreat, Sri Swami Ram Das realized that the manifestation of Ram, or beloved God, is everywhere, within or without. Filled with never-ending bliss and joy, Sri Swami Ram Das went on to found the Anand Ashram, with Mother Krishnabai as his deputy. The ashram became a spiritual center where people could experience and cultivate unconditional love and service. Sri Swami Ram Das's book, The Divine Life, is a compilation of more than 200 essays. These reflect the radiating insights gained through his inner understanding of the truth. We will now share with you selections from The Divine Life by Swami Ram Das. Divine Thought. In order to attain to the supreme blessedness of life, namely the realization of God, we have to surcharge our thought with the idea of God. God must take possession of our mind until our mind is no longer there as such, and God alone is. Until this is done, the aspirant must employ every means possible to control the mind and its activities so that the thought of God alone should rule in it. This thought must sink deep into the mind, transforming its fickle, restless, and impure nature into the very spirit of joy, purity, and peace. The world is hungering for this great ideal of happiness and peace. Ram Das's experience when he was flitting from village to village, from town to town, in the blessed land of saints, Maharashtra, was, he observed not only the intensity or keenness of spiritual hunger amongst thousands of people there who came to see him, but he also discovered that many of them, whatever the external circumstances, were drinking deep at the fountain of eternal joy. The chief condition needed for realizing this state is unceasing hunger or uninterrupted and unbroken aspiration for the immortal. The easiest means to make the mind dwell in the idea of God is to constantly reiterate mentally or vocally the name of God. Such a recitation of the name should of course be accompanied by implicit faith in the efficacy of the name, and intense love for the immortal ideal which the name represents, namely the Supreme Reality, who is absolute existence, consciousness, and bliss, and who is seated in the hearts of us all. When thus the mind is completely absorbed in the divine idea, a stage is reached when the mere individual or physical consciousness is transmuted into the universal or ever-blissful consciousness. This is all right. Everybody wishes to possess this hunger, this keen aspiration, which will bring him or her the experience of divinity. But the complaint is that such a state does not come even when one wishes for it. How then could this burning desire for the attainment of absolute bliss be generated? Just as an uneducated man or a poor man would evince an ardent wish to be a literate man or a rich man when he comes in association with a learned person or a wealthy person, so also when an ignorant, bound, and sorrow-stricken soul comes in contact with an illumined, liberated, and all-blissful person, the former by such contact is fired with a zeal to become also like the latter. Hence, the Society of Saints has been held as the most important factor in the spiritual evolution of the soul. The saints not only awaken the ignorant souls and create in them a thirst for self-realization, but also infuse into them by their blessings the needed spiritual strength to battle against the forces that confront the aspirant in his march towards this goal of supreme beatitude. In order to know our actual facial features, we have to look into the mirror. Similarly, if we wish to get a glimpse of our real and immortal life, we can do so only when we are in the company of saints. Saints are truly the redeemers of fallen souls. It is by their power alone the mind that runs in pursuit of transient pleasures can be made to concentrate its attention upon the eternal, changeless, and blissful indwelling reality. When thus the mind is permeated through and through with the imperishable idea of God, man attains the supreme goal of life. God realization does bring about not only the divinization of the internal life of man, but also all his external life and activities. He beholds all beings and things as the illumined expressions of the one all-pervading divinity. Satsang awakens the human soul and fills his thoughts with divine light and joy and grants him the knowledge of the immortal self, which in its turn confers upon the devotee the comprehensive knowledge of God in all his aspects. Divine Name. Divine love is attained through the realization of God, as dwelling in and pervading all the manifestations, thus granting the freed soul the bliss of universal vision. The difficulty that confronts the devotee in his path to the supreme goal of life is the restless nature of his mind. A mind purified and concentrated upon the great ideal enables the devotee to realize his oneness and union with him, and get the vision of him in all beings, creatures, and things. God realization is only for him who has so controlled his mind as to subdue the desires relating to the objects of the senses. Now, what is the unfailing, easy, and most potent practice by which the unruly mind can be brought under subjection? This is the singing of God's hallowed name. God is the beloved of the devotee's heart, and to attain him is the one great passion of his life. Constant taking of his name attunes his mind with him, who is at once the Lord of his heart and of the universe. The melodious music issuing from the sound of the name of his eternal beloved charms and lulls the mind and fills it with purity, peace, and bliss. In other words, it dissolves the mind in the blissful nectar of God's own immortal, all-pervading, and all-inclusive being. The repetition of the great name of the Lord, destroying the impure thoughts of the mind, which are the sole cause of its distraction, brings him absolute calmness and peace. Thus, the divine name transforms man from a mere tool, in the grip of the rising waves of passion, into a being full of the everlasting radiance, love, and joy of the Lord. Hence the power of God's name is infinite, since it can not only free the soul from the bondage of birth and death by making him realize his deathless and ever blissful existence, but can also bring about his perfect union with God. When the devotee is experiencing the joy of his close communion with and absorption in God, he becomes liberated from the individual sense or ego. In this condition, it is that the blessed devotee sees his beloved everywhere. He has now surrendered himself up in every aspect to the Supreme Lord and Controller of the whole universe. So God's all-powerful name takes the aspiring soul to the highest summit of the truth. What is required first is an absolute faith in the greatness and potency of the name. Given this faith, which comes only by the grace of the Lord, the devotee swiftly reaches his all-merciful feet. Indeed, the glory of the name is simply inexpressible, and its power simply unsurpassable. All success be to thee, O sweet and enchanting name, to control the mind. Therefore, there is no method, no sadhana, daily spiritual practice, so effective and easy as to repeat the glorious name. It stills the disturbed mind and plunges it into bliss. The only precious thing in this world, by the possession of which we could attain an exalted state of pure peace and joy, is the name of the Lord. Its melodious sound, coupled with the pure consciousness of the one reality which it signifies, frees the mind from all its passions, permitting the outflow of the eternal joy inherent in the human soul. The divine name is a powerful boat that takes man across the whirlpools of life to the haven of his eternal and spiritual nature. His name transforms man from the human to the divine. The divine name is the one sovereign panacea for all the physical, mental, and intellectual ills that have created the sense of diversity and misery in the world. The sweet note that rings out of the name lulls and grants repose to the troubled spirits of man. The divine name represents God, who is at once the Lord and Master of the universe, as also the universe itself and everything beyond. So to be in tune with the name is to be in tune with the infinite truth, and thus to transmute the lower, stumbling, and ignorant human nature into the glorious, self-illumined nature. To be in communion with God through the music of His name is to earn the very bliss of immortality. God is a supreme power who always works with a heart filled with infinite love and compassion. All activities in the world proceed from such a heart, but man in his ignorance misconstrues the workings of the divine will and instead of submitting to it, revolts and strives against it, and thus becomes miserable. Submission to God's will and a cheerful attitude towards all circumstances of life, and to be engaged in a blissful and selfless activity, can be possible only when man is in intimate communion and oneness with Him who is love and goodness. This touch with and absorption in Him is attained only when we keep on within the mind a continuous stream of God remembrance. The way to do it is to harmonize the mind with the melody of God's sweet and glorious name. Truly, the name is Brahman Himself. He who tastes the nectar of the name experiences everlasting joy. The divine name purifies the mind of its ego and desires and floods the whole being with light and joy. The heart that has captured the name becomes God's own heart. It opens the very source of infinite love and universal vision. In other words, it blesses man with the supreme vision of God in the universe and beyond. The divine name grants man inexhaustible power of endurance and patience, causing the latent springs of spiritual strength and joy to reveal themselves in Him. The glorious name of the Lord is incomparable in its greatness, power, and love, because by its grace man realizes his immortality and union with God, the Lord of the universe. By the power of the name, man can rend the veil of ignorance, and through the light of the knowledge behold God in his own heart, and in the hearts of all things and creatures in the world. God is infinite love, and He dwelleth in us all. We are eternally one with and different from Him. Man is the blissful child of a blissful mother, for God is the very being of immortal joy and peace. When the heart has flowered with the fragrance of divine joy, it overflows out as pure love, peace, and compassion. Such a love is inundating the world and all its beings. The divine name leads you to this ocean of joy. Blessed, thrice blessed, is he who knows and experiences the immeasurable greatness of the divine name. Wondrous name. There is no word in the human tongue which wields such a marvelous power that mysteriously works for absolute good as the name which stands for God. The name of the Lord is the very expression of God as a mystic sound. To attune the mind to the sweet melody of the name is to harmonize your life with the life eternal. The music of the name brings about the union of the individual soul with the universal soul. When the soul loses itself in the thrills generated by the name, it attains a state of ineffable ecstasy, in which all forms and lives are seen as the manifestation of the one supreme essence of truth. The name expands the narrow vision of the individual into a vision of infinite value and grandeur. The soul, who is drinking deep at the nectarine charm of the name, rises from the lower worlds of fettered thought and action and enters into the universal kingdom of freedom and perfection. Now this transformed life reveals in all its glory the magnificence of the basic reality of which it and the worlds are but expressions. By the power of the name, its votary distinctly perceives the inner laws and purposes which work out the external phenomenal changes in the universe. When the name becomes the sole mainstay and refuge of the aspirant who thirsts for the highest goal of life, God realization, he or she marches towards the ideal not only in rapid strides, but also with a heart filled with courage and cheerfulness. Indeed, blessed is the soul who possesses an unflinching faith in the greatness of the divine name. It is rightly said that a king can extend his empire to the ends of the earth. Nay, he can gain even the lordship of the worlds, but it is extremely hard to conquer and subdue the mind. The real and the greater hero is he or she who has controlled and mastered the mind. This mastery is possible only when the invincible divine energy latent in the heart of the human being is awakened and is set to work, in place of the weak individual will and initiative. The name, in reaching this ideal, proves an invaluable and irresistible means. Constant utterance of the name arrests the restless nature of the mind and, developing a high state of concentration, conserves all the physical and mental energies for removing the veil from the indwelling truth who is infinite power, light, peace and joy. In a word, the name is an unfailing key that unlocks the gates of the heart, permitting an outflow of immortal love, wisdom and power. Thereafter, the soul is merged in the universal effulgence of an eternal and all-blissful existence.
Your body is not meant to be non-vegetarian. Anything you put in which is unsuitable is going to destroy you. The Honorable Maneka Gandhi, vegan.
Gracious viewers, it's been a splendid to have your company on today's words of wisdom. May your pursuit of the divine bring peace to your heart and soul in God's boundless benevolence.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/WOW.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/WOW.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule y suprememastertv.com/WOW.
ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਅਨੇਕ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ। ਕਿਰਪਾ ਦੇਖੋ suprememastertv.com/schedule ਅਤੇ suprememastertv.com/WOW